Hello, I'm Mike Cross, curator of the Pana History Museums. In this series of videos, we will chronicle, memorialize, and pay tribute to those who have served their country and sacrificed while doing so. Today in this episode, we will pay tribute to Warrant Officer Francis Albert Rochkes, or Butch as everyone knew him. Warrant Officer Rochkes was born on March 9, 1946, to Mr. and Mrs. Alex Rochkes of Pana, Illinois. Warrant Officer Rochkes grew up in Pana and graduated from Pana High School. We have with us today two of his close friends, A.J. Wiss and Linda Parkinson. How would you describe Butch in one word?
Friendly.
Friendly? How about you, Linda?
Cute kid.
Cute kid? That's a good one. Okay, I have a few questions here I'm going to ask you. How about his childhood, AJ?
Well, we grew up in the Sacred Heart School, and from kindergarten on, and we got to know the nuns quite well, and our misdeeds and that. I mean, they took redress immediately, but he was in a lot better shape than I was in terms of discipline. But anyway, we got through the 8th grade and graduated from grade school and went on to high school.
And that's where you met Butch, was in high school, Linda?
Yes. I didn't know Butch very well in the beginning. He became husband to one of my friends, and I called her yesterday, and I would like to read what she told me about Butch.
Well, please do.
She told me they started dating their junior year in Pana, Illinois. Like many kids of that time, they spent time at the local roller rink where they got to know each other better. Butch always wanted to be a pilot and enjoyed making model airplanes from balsa. He had a special one hanging from the ceiling in his bedroom. He enlisted in the Army in the spring of 1966. His goal was to fly a helicopter and be an officer by the age of 20. Basic training was in Texas. He and Joanna, my friend, who was Joanna Hereos, married August 27, 1966. They drove to Alabama for warrant officer and helicopter training before graduation in January of 1967. They bought a 1967 blue Camaro, and then after graduation they drove to Pana, where they stayed for 2 weeks. During that time the car was in an accident, and the only questions that Butch asked were, "Are you okay, and can we drive the car?" And then he said, "We will be fine." And it was. They drove across the United States to Washington State. They had originally planned to move to California, but plans changed. Butch told Joanna, "We do not go back home. We are 20. We go anyway." After arriving in Washington, they found a place for Joanna to live with another military wife and a job for her, and Butch left the next day en route to Hawaii and then Vietnam. Joanna soon found a better job, and that is where she was in August when she received notice that Butch was missing in action. She and Butch wrote many letters, and she had not received one for a while, and she was nervous. His last letter said he was in the field and sleeping under a helicopter. Big mission tomorrow, and if needed, she should contact the R&R Center to find her husband. Many phone calls to his parents and others were made by the military. She was not allowed to fly home, so her mother flew out to bring her home. About 2 weeks later, Army personnel came to their home to tell them that Butch had been shot down and he had died. That balsa airplane that was hanging in his bedroom fell from the ceiling the day his helicopter went down. About Butch, Joanna said, after basic training, he changed. He became more quiet. He was very dedicated and believed in what he was doing.
Wow.
Yeah.
We all sacrifice, but some sacrifice it all. So thank you for that letter. Very powerful. Well, I was going to try to lighten it up a little bit by asking about you guys hanging out in a park and maybe ice skating in a lagoon or going to Rebens or hanging out at George's. I know you own the George's building. AJ, you grew up there. We all grew up there, and you wound up owning it. So, do you have any stories of maybe the weekend at George's and then who knows what?
Well, these were the years of muscle cars,
Yeah.
and some people were lucky enough to have GTOs. And Butch had a Mopar 383, and our hobby was to go to Decatur, El Dorado Street,
Oh yeah.
and race between lights.
Yeah.
Somebody would pull up, and we would make it a competition.
Yeah.
And for the grace of God, nobody got in trouble, but we had a lot of fun and so forth. But
A lot of rubber left on El Dorado Street, wasn't there?
oh, absolutely.
I think so.
That was our main hobby at that time.
Yeah. We
I
used to.
have one other thing to add to this. Joanna told me that I didn't write down. She said he had a Catholic funeral and a military funeral, both. She said it was very hard.
Warrant Officer Rochkes started his enlistment and his training in early 1966. Warrant Officer Rochkes arrived in Vietnam on February 10th, 1967 as a UH-1C Huey helicopter pilot for Troop C of the 1st Squadron, 9th Cavalry Regiment of the 1st Cavalry Division of the U.S. Army. Warrant Officer Rochkes was assigned as co-pilot to Raider 25 under the leadership of Captain Robert Thompson and with Lieutenant Horatio Tittle and SP4 Ray Moran filling out the crew. In early August, the U.S. Army started conducting Operation Persian in the San Ri Valley area of South Vietnam. On August 9th, 1967, 6 Hueys left Bong Son Air Base, headed for LZ Pat in the Song Ri Valley. After landing, the enemy opened fire. After dropping their troops, the 6 choppers lifted off to head back to Bong Son. 3 of those choppers never arrived. One of those Hueys that was shot down was the chopper crewed by Raider 25, tail number 6509422, piloted by Captain Robert Thompson and co-piloted by Warrant Officer Francis Rochkes. The target that day was Landing Zone Pat. It turns out LZ Pat was right in the middle of an anti-aircraft battalion of NVA and Viet Cong. The enemy had positioned themselves in such a way that when they fired at an American aircraft with small arms, the natural act of turning away from the fire would put the aircraft into position for being fired upon by heavier weapons. The enemy had dug in the hillside in such a way that they could push their heavy guns out to fire and pull them back in when not in use. The chopper crewed by Raider 25 was hit by small arms fire. suspected to be 7.62 caliber strikes from the small arms caused the U to burst into flames mid-air and crash into the top of a nearby hill. None of the crew survived. Due to heavy enemy presence, the site of the crash of Raider 25 was unreachable until the following day. At that time, a team from the 19 reached the site of the crash that took the team of Raider 25. On August 10th, 1967, after exactly 6 months in country, the body of Warrant Officer Francis Rochkes was recovered, along with the rest of Raider 25. The U.S. Army identified the remains of Warrant Officer Rochkes 6 days later on August 16, 1967. Thank you for your service, sir. Rest in peace.